Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. So, last night, I watched the Friday the 13th 4, which is titled The Final Chapter, but then again, yes, it is the final chapter of the first 4 of the the first setup. Then we get into the others, the other 6, 7, 8 movies. So, in a way, yes, it is the final chapter of the first set of the... See, it's complicated. Is it the final chapter? Yeah, not necessarily. It's never the final chapter. But I understand where they were going, young Corey Feldman, who was I want to say 10 at best, 8, 9, 10 at best, did a pretty good job. And I did not realize this before, but the dad in Back to the Future is in this movie, which I find hilarious. And he literally died so he can film Back to the Future. I think that was his only purpose in this movie. Just to freaking die so he can go play so he can play the dad in Back to the Future. Look, I love Back to the Future, but it is what it is. We got what we got from this movie, which isn't... It's not the best, but it's not the worst. After this movie, it kind of starts to, the direction shifts, which is fine, cool, great, but it's not the final chapter yet. Cause technically the final chapter is technically 9, which is Freddy Goes to Hell. But then again, we are kind of on that, we are getting to that path. We are on that path to going to hell and getting to that point where Freddy finds Jason and pretty much possesses him, or pretty much possesses him to kill people on Elm Street. So yeah, makes sense, kind of, sort of. So yeah, that is where we are in the franchise. We are at that point of in the franchise where things are going to get wackier and crazier, and the kill counts are going to be set up a lot more elaborately, and the kills are going to be more creative, because you got to have creative kills. Just saying. Any horror movie, if it's classic, slasher, or whatever, you have to have creative kills in your movie. Not condoning killing, but you gotta be creative with your kills. Each kill has to be creative than the last. You don't want to just take a machete, all the time. It kind of gets boring. It kind of gets stale. Yeah, it kind of gets stale after a while. You gotta be able to utilize your machete skills pretty decently. Swap out a machete for a bow and arrow if you want to. Maybe a bucket, But the most important thing is, in any horror movie, is you got to be creative. Be creative. Okay? Be creative. But anyways, it is a pretty decent movie. It's not the best part, and it's not the worst part. That's gonna come down years. That's gonna come fairly somewhat later down the timeline. But then again, it's a nice, decent 1980s movie, which isn't too shabby. But then again, you gotta respect this. You gotta respect it, cause yes, is it underappreciated? Yes, absolutely, it is underrated. This movie is underrated for what it is. But then again, you gotta appreciate the effort that they took. Everybody involved took. You gotta appreciate the effort. So that I do have to give props to. The effort, and the time and commitment they took, Plus, it came at a time where anybody could do rated up, do horror movies, you could cast a baby in a horror movie, and the baby could save the day, that's how it was back then. I believe when they put in the rated R system or whatever, the PG-13 rating system or whatever the rating thing is, that's when you had to be 18. You couldn't be you couldn't be in a horror movie unless you were 18. And So, like, kind of makes sense, you know. I mean, I think I think it's different now. But back then, yeah, absolutely. This was like, I mean, you do have your like PG-13 horror. You have your light horror. You have your light R. You have your mid R rating, and you have your hardcore R. You know, and you're like, then you have your super duper hard, and then you have your super, and then you have your super hardcore, and then you have your super duper hardcore rating, and then you just have you flat out R. Like so hardcore R that words can't even describe it. Of how R it is. Or how R rated it is. Don't know if that makes sense, but I guess it makes sense. Somewhere, somehow, some way, shape, or form. But then again, it is still very 80s, okay? We are still in the era of the 80s, okay? The 80s is iconic for horror. Like, if you want great horror, watch any horror movie from the 80s. Okay? That is the purest form of horror you could get. Like, that is like the perfect age of horror. Like, yeah, you had your like, you had your early days, like your R ratings. I mean, sorry, horror movies have changed so much over like the course of 100 years, or over 100 years. Yeah, 100. Like 100 years ago, the most R-rated movie you could have watched was Nosferatu. That was like the scariest movie back then. Like, a freaking vampire was like the most scariest thing you could watch on the big screen. And then we get like, and then we get Dracula, the Werewolf Man, the Mummy, the Invisible Man, the Blob, you know. And then we get to like, and then we get into like territories like the Human Centipede, the Leprechaun movie franchise, Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, freaking Psycho, American Psycho, so on and so forth. And then it evolved into what horror movies are today. Just elevated horror, you know, psychological horror, spiritual horror, if that makes sense. But then again, it is what it is. I mean, for what it is worth, it is not a terrible movie. But then again, it is just a decent movie that tries to be different, you know? So, props to trying to be different enough to give new life to the franchise. I mean, it happens all the time, you know? But anyways, pretty good movie. So, pretty good and decent movie, I should say. Must I say anything else? But anyways, that's all I have for you guys so far for right now. Please like, share, subscribe. Have a good day. Thanks.